can't wait to see that deck and see what it's got going in store for it. Instead, it's going to be Druid versus Rogue, and Firebat's going to be the one leading off with Rogue here. And Sjow's opening hand with Druid is looking a little bit rough so far. So Shade probably going to be the one kept here, and then these two Savage Roars and this Ancient Lore are going to be pitched back. And Firebat's hand, this is actually, I think, one of the better starts that Rogue has versus Druid, which is having Blood Mage Thalnos and having a Backstab.
Yeah, Backstab is really nice for just getting the early board control. But Firebat will also be looking to get a lot of minions. The Violet Teacher is the one that strikes me as the most important. It's the one that can snowball the most. And also something like Azure Drake is something that can refill your hand when it's getting a little anemic around turn 5.
We see Gnomish Inventor in his hand too. I'm curious exactly why this inclusion was put in here. Obviously, it's put in here because he wants a little bit of extra card draw, but what did he trim for this? And what exactly is this aimed at? Like, is this targeted at a specific kind of matchup, or is it just the best card draw body that you can actually have in Rogue?
You know, Gnomish Inventor was a card that was used in Miracle Rogue back in the day, and Raynad was actually a player. When he played the Invent Invitational #1, he was like, hey, why don't I just bring the exact Miracle Rogue that was played like before, around Nax Rammus pretty much. Unfortunately, he got something like Oath Reed with that Miracle Rogue deck, and just it shows to show you that Miracle Rogue, the exact version that players have been playing, probably not the best thing to bring to tournaments these days.
Ever since Auctioneer got increased to 6 mana, I would definitely say it's probably not the best one that you want to be bringing here. Sjow actually chose not to Innervate out Shade turn 1, and I'm a little bit surprised by that. Especially because he had coin into his second Shade, and we just saw Lothar come off a game where he led with turn 1 Shade and turn 2 Shade, and that basically can just end the game if it extends long enough. Why do you think Sjow is choosing to hold back his Shades in this one and go for more of a normalized curve with just a turn 2 Pilot Shredder and then what looks like turn 3 and turn 4 Shades?
I think the obvious answer is he might be afraid of some big Blade Flurry, but also he might just be afraid of not curving well. Turn 2 you have Shade, turn 1 you have Shade, turn 2 you have Shade, but turn 3 is kind of, I don't know, you're not going to be able to draw anything unless it's an Innervate that can fill out the curve, and you're probably going to be missing a turn. But I kind of agree with what you're hinting. I probably would have preferred those earlier Shades that can grow and grow, and that have the potential to get out of Blade Flurry range earlier.
Yeah, I would tend to favor that as well, I think. And I think most people would. So it's going to be curious to see how this game pans out. I imagine if he's not doing it, it is a matchup-specific thing for why he's not doing it, because it seems extremely unconventional to just not make Shades on turn 1 and 2. It's like some of the strongest plays that are available in the game. Firebat actually taking a really aggressive line here, too. He's going to start the damage off straight away, and this is something that we see from him a lot, is taking these really aggressive lines where if he doesn't have a favorable trade, he'll take face damage instead and either allow his opponent to continue following that trade trend or to start initiating the trades themselves on minion wise. And so when your opponent chooses to go for the attacking minions route, you buy yourself a few extra points of damage, and when your opponent goes for face, it really depends on the range of cards you have that play against what's happening here. So with this specific range, I think that trading life totals probably favors Sjow, and then Tinker Sharpsword Oil gets picked up. So you may want to ignore everything I just said.
To your credit, in Korea, actually, Firebat's nickname is the father of going face, so it just speaks to how likely he is to go for face in certain matchups. Would you like that to be your nickname, like in the Western scene?
I think I go for
the father of going face.
I think I go for face a little bit too much. I still like that they call me the Dark Iron Dwarf. I'm totally okay with that. Dark Iron Dwarf's a badass. Who would you rather want to be than Dark Iron Dwarf? Like, I don't want to be Defender of Argus. I don't want to be Earthring Farseer.
I don't know, something like Dr. Boom. That's always a good one.
He's like a specific one though. Like, I don't feel like anyone can be a legendary. That's what I feel like.
I see.
Yeah, I don't feel like anyone can be Edwin Van Cleef except for Edwin Van Cleef. Maybe that's just my maybe I'm getting a little bit too roleplay here.
Yeah, you're such a role player.
I'm okay with that, man. I'll roll some d20s with the best of them.
Yeah, we see this Blood Mage Thalnos keep really paying off for Firebat. He's able to, along with the backstab, he's able to get a free 3 damage, and he can even considering burning the Eviscerate right now.
Yeah, I think he wants to go for Van Cleef, which is why he's choosing to not burn Eviscerate. And when that happens, I imagine this is going to yield some attacks on the Sludge Belcher. So ends up with a 2-1, ends up with a 6-6 Van Cleef. This is an okay board position, but again, he's taken a lot of damage to get to this point, just under the mark of Big Game Hunter as well.
Yeah, this also makes the board very uncomfortable for Sjow to deal with. Even though he does have the swipe, he's gonna be able to have to do. He has to find some 2 extra damage somewhere else in order to finish the Van Cleef if that's what he wants to go for. His other options are just to play a Shade and then maybe attack. Maybe just ignore the Van Cleef. That's also a possibility.
Yeah, ignoring Van Cleef always feels like one of those things where I feel like I'm going to do an okay job when I ignore it, and then it crushes me. And that's part of the reason why it's so powerful in Rogue. Like, I feel like if this is in another class, it wouldn't be quite as good. But in Rogue, it's like, it's such a powerful card because Rogue is their entire game plan is tempo oriented. So I do like going for the swipe here, and I imagine that this Piloted Shredder is going to be put into face still. So it's just because he's got so much damage on the board. So the swipe, I think, it's more of like a proactive plan, where if Firebat wants to do anything with his Van Cleef, it's kind of checked. But he can't get too much value out of it, but he's not getting nothing out of it either. So both of them pretty beneficial in that regard.
Yeah, both players at this point are just looking to put their opponents in very awkward positions. The Van Cleef will be, he's just checked by that slime, and there's actually not very efficient ways for Firebat to be able to deal with this slime. Firebat was going for face a lot in the initial phases of the game, but because he didn't decide to trade into the Piloted Shredder in the early stages of the game, this Piloted Shredder has gotten around 12 damage already.
Yeah, it certainly adds up really quickly. I mean, 4 power bodies just do that. Such a strong minion. So Violet Teacher and Eviscerate, if that's what it's going to be. But Fan of Knives SI is probably going to be what he's going with here. So see what he picks up. Another Fan of Knives. So this is actually really important what minion this summons. It's a 3-2. I think a 3-2 is just going to get the job done.
Yeah, 3-2 is very nice. He can consider trading into the Edwin. And I think that might be a good play just to trade because he knows the Rogue is in like a lot of the Rogue has the potential for a lot of burst right now.
I think it would have been a good trade until he drew that Druid of the Claw. And so now what he's looking at is the potential to charge Druid of the Claw his opponent's face, force minion trades on the other end, and then just have Force Nature to follow it up. The other thing he can do is he can just Force Nature now, put one of the tokens into Van Cleef, 7 into the face, and then he's got lethal with Druid of the Claw and Hero Power next turn, unless Firebat's able to supplement his life total or put up a taunt or something. So I really like this line of play.
Yeah, I like this play a lot better than
Druid of the Claw,
choices.
Druid of the Claw, swipe, Savage Roar, and a second Force of Nature, I think all drastically changed the lines that he was going to take this game. And that's exactly what you're seeing. So Firebat doesn't actually have a way to get out of range of this Druid of the Claw and Hero Power. So game 1's going to be heading over to Sjow. And a quick one. I still think I would have tended to favor Firebat's initiative in this game of trying to attack face, and just at the end of the day, Sjow's draw was strong enough to be able to combat that. A turn 2 Piloted Shredder ended up being a major difference in this game.
Yeah, somewhat of an unconventional play from Sjow in order to get the Piloted Shredder out faster rather than the 2 Shades. But as we can see in this game, it kind of turned out pretty well for Sjow, I'd have to say.
Yeah, 2 Shades Sjow. So 1-0 for him. And this is Conquest format for those of you who are just joining us. So Sjow's Druid deck is actually going to be locked. Conquest is when you win a game with a deck, that deck becomes locked instead. It's not like last Hero Standing where if you win with a deck, you have to stay with it. So Firebat going to have all 3 of his decks still available to him, and at any game, players can choose an unlocked deck. So Sjow is working with Rogue, and he's working with Warrior now. What do you think he's going to go with in this lineup when Firebat's got Rogue, Druid, and Priest? Like, Priest, I feel like it's got to be, like, kind of throwing off exactly how he's going to choose to queue up here.
Yeah, Priest just throws a wrench into anything that Rogue that Sjow could choose, because Firebat is a player that never plays Priest, so you never know what to expect. Like, if you're facing a Maz and he's playing Priest, he's somewhat predictable in the type of Priest that he plays, like the standard like Thought Steal, very controlly. Maybe it has some like few twists like Blingtrong 3000, but with Firebat, you don't really know what's good and what's bad. So I feel like if you have a more stable deck, and one that you're more comfortable with, such as the Warrior from Sjow, that might just be a strong pick against the unknown factor of the Priest.
I'm curious to see how it's going to come into play. So what do you think that what does Firebat then go with here? I mean, again, just this priest deck I feel like is really hurting the way that you can kind of predict and see how this matchup's going to line up, because it's the only priest in this tournament. We haven't seen priest doing a lot on ladder. We haven't seen priest been doing a lot in tournaments in general, which just I kind of look at it and I go, what is this doing in the lineup?
Yeah, if we've been seeing a lot of 3-0s in today so far. RDU 3-0'd Caldi, was it, or Frezar?
Yeah, all three. He 3-0 against Caldi. All three of our matches have been 3-0 so far.
Yeah, so I just really hope that there won't be a 3-0 this match, so we eventually do get to see Firebat's priest. In the last series, 6-0 was 3-0'd, and actually after the match, 6-0 actually sent me his rogue list, which is a really interesting rogue list, I have to say. And it was just really unfortunate for the viewers that he didn't get to play it. And the similar aspect with Firebat, he's bringing a priest, and we really want to see that because it's just never been heard of before. But Sjow does get the warrior matchup, warrior against rogue, and I feel like that's going to be one that he really wants.
See, I think the opposite about this matchup, and I've thought about it for a long time. And when I see it develop, every single time I see rogues lose this matchup, they just don't have anything going for them, basically throughout the entirety of the game. But that's just going to happen. Warrior will have those same kinds of draws at the same time. So I think a lot of these games, when they're won and lost, are going to be kind of traded back and forth on, just who didn't get the right draw and didn't get anything going for them. But Sjow's got stuff like Senjin Shieldmaster in his deck. He's got a copy of Big Game Hunter, which isn't in every single warrior build that you see recently. So a couple of cards I think that aren't going to be performing exceptionally well versus rogue. And Firebat, when he's got this copy of Gnomish Inventor, this is like that little bit of extra gas that he's looking for to kind of get the ball rolling. It's not a big deal, but digging one card extra into your deck and having a body on the board that warrior does eventually have to consider makes a big difference in this matchup.
Yeah, I feel like in this matchup is one of the matchups where Gnomish Inventor is really going to shine. But as we say that, a Gadgetzan Auctioneer has been drawn from Firebat. So it is, as we kind of speculated, this is going to be closer to a Miracle Rogue that Reynad actually ran in GVG in the Invent Invitational, where he went 0-3.
So hopefully we don't see any more 3-0s. That's the one thing we were trying to avoid. I want to see this priest deck get played. But let's focus back on this game for a second. Gadgetzan Auctioneer gets drawn, and I feel like this is one of those super key cards in a matchup like this, where warrior can struggle so much with dealing with Gadgetzan Auctioneer, especially when rogue has the coin. Do you think it's going to be the case in this game, or do you just think that just the amount of card draw he would have had anyway is going to be enough? Like, how much pressure is this Gadgetzan Auctioneer actually adding to what's going on?
I think with this particular draw, it probably doesn't matter that much. Because there's an acolyte in the field, we're probably going to be seeing something like a coin Adradrake. But just as I say that, Violet Teacher gets drawn, so ignore that. If he didn't draw this Violet Teacher, he might have been forced to coin the Adradrake. So he gives up his coin and he gives up another spell for his Auctioneer to be used. So in this particular game, I don't think the Auctioneer will come too much into effect, just because there's so much gas already in Firebat's hand.
Yeah, so choosing to take out this Acolyte because Sjow did not attack with his Deathbite, so he doesn't have the charge of it set up. So this Violet Teacher, a much bigger threat than it would usually be. Sjow's got Shield Slam, and Shield Block and Shield Slam to help take that out, though. But he doesn't get to develop if he chooses to make that line. So this might just be a Whirlwind instead. You really don't want to let Violet Teacher get out of control. Like, if something goes wrong with that, you're going to be kicking yourself if it happens. This also uses his mana a little bit more efficiently, too.
Yeah, if something like an Earthen Ring So Farseer comes down, for example, it might just mess up Sjow's plans if he does something strange and doesn't deal with the Violet Teacher on this particular turn.
Whirlwind also not the most useful card in this matchup. Aside from Violet Teacher, it really doesn't get much done, so making good use of his cards as early as he can is also another good game plan.
All right, so no Mission Inventor comes down. A Deadly Poison is drawn. Oh man, this Armor Smith is just so annoying. It's got the perfect amount of health at 4 health that you eventually have to deal with it, or the warrior just gets too much damage for you to too much armor for you to burst down. But it's just it's a 2-mana minion that you have to use something like an Eviscerate for. Yeah. Not really what you want.
This is sort of the downside of not being able to develop also, is that if Warrior's the first one to put a significant threat on the board, they can very easily start to run away with games. And Shield Maiden is not the kind of minion that you ever want to sap. So how he chooses to go forward from here, this is tough. I mean, you might see a sap this turn even. just to try to get more stuff on the board. He's seen a Whirlwind at this point and one of the Death Spites out of the equation, so he may feel comfortable just pushing forward.
Oh, are we actually going to see an Auctioneer? I haven't seen one of those in a while. Auctioneer on the field, maybe? If he plays the Auctioneer, though, he can get a coin out, a backstab out, and a deadly poison out. I think he's going to save the Auctioneer at this point because this essentially gives a similar effect, and he's already has so many cards in his hand already that he doesn't really need any more right now.
This is actually pretty tough. I think he's going to end up using a deadly poison here just to make sure this 5/5 doesn't stick.
Oh, that feels so bad.
Whoa, he's actually just going to set up that. You know, this is actually a turn where this kind of signals a bluff over to Sjow, where he feels like he doesn't, like, I don't think Firebat wants the board to get developed anymore for Sjow. So when he throws this poison on a dagger, he's really trying to telegraph something like, hey, I have a big Blade Flurry available, so you need to watch out. And Sjow sort of, kind of, I think he would have Death Spited anyway, but if he didn't have Death Spite, I think he actually might have picked up on something like that and chosen to not attack. And chosen not to develop his board further, simply in fear of something like Blade Flurry.
Yeah, fortunately for Sjow, he did have that Death Spite, so he feels perfectly safe right now with his board. He's not really too vulnerable to anything like a big Blade Flurry. Plus, he's developed his board very well, including this Death Spite. And he'll just be able to contest this Valley Teacher very well. Basically, anything that Rogue can put on the field right now is going to have 5 or less health. Not many players play Dr. Boom. Not many Rogue players play Dr. Boom, so that's not even too much of a consideration. And even if Dr. Boom comes down, we have the Execute already in Sjow's hand. So no matter what Firebat plays on this turn, Sjow will have an effective way of dealing with it.
I got the best deal.
And be careful how he chooses to allocate all his cards here. It's going to be Auctioneer. It's going to be Coin. Those are no-brainers. And it looks like he's going to have to just sap this. And so I don't think he's very thrilled with this. But there's just not a lot of other plays. He has enough gas in his hand, though, I think, that he's okay with sacrificing his Auctioneer in a position like this. And just making sure that the board doesn't get out of control and that his opponent isn't able to just put a bunch of damage into his face. But Sjow, I mean, these 2 Shield Slams may allow him to just continue this onslaught. Like, I imagine Shield Maiden and Shield Slam is going to be what's coming here. And Firebat, I think, is trying to get rid of this Death Spite so he can start to develop his board. And just Sjow's not letting that happen.
Yeah, Sjow knows that if he saves his Death Spite right now, his opponent will essentially be in the same situation over and over again. It's just a lot of okay. Backstab is going to come down. He's actually going to be able to deal with the Shield Maiden, but again, this Death Spite will be able to cleave down the 4/4, and Sjow will be able to develop even further. Wow, and Ysera.
Whoa, Ysera gets drawn, and this is like, what is going on? This is like Warrior circa 1997 here.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that card in Warrior in ages.
Yeah, I've seen it before in a deck by Fibonacci, who's like, again, I've mentioned him before. He's like the premier NA ladder warrior player. He's like OG warrior. Most people don't know about him because he's primarily a ladder player, but he always gets like some of the very highest legends on NA. And he's a player that tends to use Ysera in warrior because he likes to use it against druids. If you're able to stabilize as warrior and you throw down a Ysera on the board, it's pretty much game over against druid.
Now, mind you, Fibonacci plays Deathwing a lot too. And from what I understand, Fibonacci puts Ysera and Deathwing in his decks because he gets bored. That's my understanding of the situation from it.
I have no time.
So still going to keep his Death Spite here. And just going to go Sylvanas and Armor Up, choosing not even to use his Death Spite on the Azure Drake here. So still trying to disrupt the flow of the game here. Both these players fighting so hard for board control. And I think that what Sjow's trying to do with his Sylvanas is he's trying to actually force out a bunch of removal, or he's trying to get the second sap out of the way so he can play Ysera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Firebat has like a kind of an easy sap this turn, but I think you actually would just want to clear this Sylvanas. It's not a minion that it really is worth sapping. In this particular scenario, just because the warrior, it has potentially Ragnaros, it has like Sneasel Shredder sometimes, it has Alex Straza, and in this scenario, he even has Ysera. So I think Ysera is definitely going to be the card that he's going to save his sap for.
Yeah, mind you, I don't think he knows Ysera's in this deck.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah,
Certainly
so
not.
unless he's exceptionally familiar with Show's builds right now, which if there's one person I think that is going to be familiar with builds, it's going to be Firebat. He's going to give the nod to pressure here instead, though. So 6/6 Van Cleef's going to get made.
The Brotherhood shall come.
And he's just going to start going for face here. And Sjow, this is an opportunity for him to play Ysera, but I don't really know if like this is like an optimal Ysera turn.
Oh, I think it's pretty good right now. You can clear the board plus play Ysera. I mean, this is as
Oh, wow,
about
I didn't see that
as
execute.
good as
Oh my
you
gosh,
can
I didn't see
play.
the execute. Oh geez, that is a way good Ysera board. Forgive me.
Man.
That is
Man.
that's problematic. Yep, and wow, Sjow dreams and the world trembles.
Very nice.
Oh my gosh, this is not a position Firebat wants to be in right now. He needs to draw third sap.
A third sap. Nice.
Unfortunately, this is not arena.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like not only is Ysera going to be drawing Sjow a lot of good dream cards, but that 4/12 body is actually going to be very relevant, clearing at least a minion every single turn.
I think Sjow actually might start favoring face here too, though. He's just got a lot of damage. I mean, with the Nightmare, 2 cool Taskmasters, a Fiery War Axe.
I actually, in this scenario, I prefer just playing a bit safer because Ysera is like just a card that, as the game goes longer, the better it is.
He's got 16 damage in his hand right now. Like this turn, he's got 16 damage if he wants it.
Back to work.
All right,
Oh,
just
fancy.
again clearing the board.
I go for face too much. Let's just
I have no time
let's just
for
put that
games.
one out there. So Ysera down to 4/9. So if something like Tinker's Sharpsword Oil gets drawn, I think Firebat may have some clean answers to this. But again, just so much value has been nabbed by Ysera at this point. Second Blade Flurry is not good.
No, that's not it. He has a 4 he has a 4 damage board clear, but that's not really enough right now. Oh, I guess it is with the eviscerate if he really
Yeah.
wants it.
He's got a board clear, but he's just investing so much damage into this, and he doesn't have a mechanism to really draw any more cards that he's lost so much ground at this point that he's got to feel like he's really far behind.
Yeah, as the rogue player, this is exactly what you don't want to do. You're usually, as the rogue player, you're hurting for damage, and you just don't want your opponent to get a lot of armor against a warrior. But right now, he's forced to expend all his damage on stuff like Ysera. And the Ysera is just effectively being a tank. It's effectively more armor for Sjow right now, getting him more health.
Yep. Wow, so much damage bought by that Ysera. Armor Smith gets picked up, and it's just going to be more armor for Sjow.
Yeah, pretty easy turn here. Just put more minions on the board, contest the board even further, and just... I don't think Sjow is even going to get under 30 health ever again for the remainder of this game.
It's going to be pretty tough. Wow, Ysera making all the difference in the world in this match. Who'd have thunk? Yeah, Firebat's just going to scoop this one up. Sjow is going to... He's going to take a 2-0 lead now. His warrior is locked, though, fortunately for Firebat. So he's got 1 deck left, and now, again, we see a player in down 2 games. This could potentially be our 4th 3-0 of the day, which is something that I think is pretty unconventional as far as Conquest is concerned.
Yeah, I guess Conquest is a format that punishes you for bringing 1 bad deck, and perhaps this Rogue is a deck that just isn't up to par with any of the other decks brought into this tournament. Auctioneer and the one Auctioneer and the one No Mission Mentor, instead of something like a Sprint, instead of something even like a Prep, we haven't even seen a Prep yet from Firebat. Those might be cuts, although actually now that I think of it, with the Auctioneer in the deck, probably not. But it's just something unconventional, and Firebat is known for unconventional things, but in this particular scenario, it might not be paying off.
Yeah, I would venture to say that Preparation's not going to get cut from Rogue decks anytime soon. That's like pretty much one of their bread and butter cards. I think it's like the reason why Rogue is good right now, honestly, is because of a card like Preparation. But this is sort of like what we saw. He drew a lot of cards that game, but he actually didn't get any action going. And so it was just sort of, it was the same tale that has been told before, where Rogue can have a lot of stuff to do, but it's not actually accomplishing anything at the same time it's doing it. Like, it needs to draw a Tinker Sharpsword oil. It needs to get preparations in big tempo turns. And none of those are just available. He had to play what was, all things considered, a pretty fair game. And I think when fair games are getting played, Warrior definitely has a big edge in those scenarios.
Yeah, Warrior, with just its weapons that often get 2-for-1s, it just thrives in an environment where the games are fair. Like when there's no things such as huge preparations, huge wild growth, huge innervate plays, that's a format, and that's a scenario where Warrior just thrives so much.
So Show's got Druid left. I'm sorry, Show's got Rogue left. And Firebat's got Rogue, Druid, and Priest. What is he going with here, and why?
I think you just go with the Priest because you want to show the fans what your Priest is, to be honest. Honestly, I'm just excited to see the Priest. I really want to see that Priest. As a caster, I just really like to see decks that I'm really confused about, decks that really excite me, and that Priest is certainly going to be one of them.
I hope it is Priest, because he's going to have to win with Priest anyway. If he wants to win the series, he has to win with Priest. So it doesn't really matter what order he queues his stuff up in unless he's looking for information. So Priest may be one of the classes that actually needs more information, so he knows exactly how to allocate his resources. But I would just so love to see Priest first anyway, because I want to see it, and everyone wants to see it, especially all 14 Priest players out there.
Yeah, if Firebat is eliminated in the next game without playing Priest, unfortunately, we're not going to see any Priest in the King Win for Charity tournament, and that's just really it's really sad right there.
Yeah, not what you want to happen. Only Priest in the tournament is Firebat, and he's got to beat Sjow at some point with it if he wants to win this series. So down to his last win needed for Sjow. He needs to go 1-2 or better with this Druid deck in order to win this series. I'm sorry, with his, I keep saying with his Druid deck, with his Rogue deck in order to win this series. So game 3 underway. Firebat needs a win to get on the board. It's going to be Rogue versus Rogue. You know, I can't blame Firebat for playing Rogue here as much as he has either. This is one of the decks I think that he performs the best with. And if he's playing it this many times in a row, it means he also thinks there's strong matchups.
Unfortunately, he's going to be pretty sad because at the beginning, we're going to see he is at a disadvantage. Sjow is starting with a coin, and that's just so huge in a Rogue mirror. As the Rogue player, you always want the coin to combo, and when you're facing a Rogue player, you don't want him to have the coin because you don't want him to combo. So right now, it's just kind of like a double whammy right here.
He does have Catch and Auctioneer preparation, though. So some potential opened up for things to happen. This is going to be Dagger Pass. And not a ton of action going on.
You know, previously in this mirror matchup, you always wanted to save, you always wanted Auctioneer in your opening hand. And if you had an Auctioneer, you always wanted preparation in your opening hand in this kind of a slower matchup against non-aggro decks. Do you think that's still the case right now in this scenario where you have cards like Violet Teacher and like Azure Drake in your, that are minions that you can play earlier instead?
It's tough to say. Like, I would imagine if he's going to play with Auctioneer, he probably wants Auctioneer in preparation. But I can understand mulliganing it. Instead, it's going to be a 6/6 Van Cleef on turn 3 for Sjow, and he's going to take out this Earthring Farce here. This is about one of the worst things I think that can happen for Firebat.
Yeah, Firebat is what Sjow is basically saying is either you have sap or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Even if Firebat had something like Backstab, Eviscerate, it would still be pretty worth it for just something like a Van Cleef that's just 3 mana and 1 card.
So tough. I think he's just got to go with. I think he's got to go with his own Van Cleef, honestly. Just hope for the best. He's got Loatheb next turn though, so he's not completely out of this. And Sjow, I imagine, is going to be applying some pressure, but he's got to have a mindful eye for the fact that this could get a little bit out of control. And Firebat's going to choose to initiate the possibility of taking 18 damage to have to clear this Van Cleef, and you can see it's pained him. But he just really doesn't have any other options available to him. He has to kill this Van Cleef, and unless he draws something next turn, he's not going to be able to do it with what he has, so he starts it now.
Unlike Firebat, Sjow has like a really good response for this Van Cleef. Backstab SI Agent is going to get the job done really nicely.
Even if it was a bigger Van Cleef, he still would have had options to take it out.
Oh, wow. This play is even better, actually. He saw that Sjow didn't have the sap, so he forces Sjow, or he saw that Firebat didn't have the sap, so he forces Firebat to have the sap once again.
Lotheb's going to come down, but I do not think this is going to be enough. It's just too much damage bought by this early Van Cleef. Sjow's got 9 points on the board, and he's able to develop further. He picks up Azure Drake right on curve.
Even more pressure on the field.
Has 2 Blade Flurries, but I don't think those matter too much right now. Firebat needs some major action this turn to get going. And Azure Drake, I don't think it's going to be enough. What does Firebat have to draw here?
He
Stay in
needs
this game?
he needs to auctioneer into preparation, into
Blade Flurry.
Blade Flurry, into another preparation, into another spell.
Yeah, well, Deadly Poison's not going to be enough, and Sjow is going to take this...